All right. Welcome, Jeana Jorgensen, to your next big thing.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you here. I'm excited to kick off our new year of episodes here. And Gina, just so everyone knows, is a corporate vice president for worldwide learning at Microsoft, based in Redmond, Washington. She's also the executive director and founder at the Pepper Foundation, which I'd love to ask her about later on. And she has a long history in big tech and previously worked at Google. So the reason I wanted to ask Gina here today is to take us through a momentous decision that she took in her career and her life to go very intentionally into spending time with family. And she's going to tell you about how she kind of made this decision, how she kind of bridged into that new place, and also how she then bridged back into a full-time role at Microsoft at a very senior leadership level. So I think if you're interested in life design, if you're interested in being intentional about choices, and if you're interested in thinking about yourself, designing your own career your way, you're going to love this episode here today with Gina. So Gina, welcome again to the show.
Well, thank you for that introduction. That was very, very lovely. So what sort of led me to that decision about deciding to take some time off and be with my family? I'll say to start with, just so the audience knows, I was a foster parent for a number of years and then had the really unique experience of being able to foster identical triplets at birth.
Amazing.
And it took about 6.5 years for them to become legally free and go through the court proceedings. And at 6.5, I was able to actually officially adopt them. And I was at Microsoft during that entire time. And I will say, Microsoft really just demonstrated what the village meant, right? They came out in droves to support me and the boys, and not only from a work perspective, but a personal perspective. And we can talk about that later, but that's sort of the situation of how my family came to be. It was certainly not a traditional route. I was a single mom, and I was fostering as a single person, and I adopted them as a single mom, and really amazing. And then during their adoption, I was given maternity leave, so parental leave. And I had 5 months to get to go spend with my kids, and I was like, wow, I didn't get any of that time because they were my foster children to take time off earlier when they were born, or you don't get the same kind of services, unfortunately, for foster children that you would, like the 100 hours of emergency daycare. You just don't qualify. So I really had very little time other than my own vacation to spend with them. So I was on parental leave, and several of my dear friends who I'd worked with previously at Microsoft had gone to Google. And they said, hey, come talk to us. And I said, I'm on 5 months of leave. I'm not talking to anybody. And I ended up having some conversations because, again, they were dear friends of mine and people I respected immensely. And I ended up deciding to go work for Google. They had made me an offer through all of these conversations. And I went to go work for Google, and I went there for 3 years. And I really enjoyed the experience. But then I had these wonderful boys who I felt like I was missing moments with. And I remember distinctly being on a call, and we were talking about the same topic we had talked about kind of repeatedly. And I remember thinking, how am I spending my time? I really, really miss the moments of being able to, take a minute and go, hang out or help in one of my children's classes. And I was taking them to school, and we had a nanny who was picking them up, and I kept hearing her voice like, oh, we did this and we did this. And I was like, wait, I want to have those experiences too. And so I thought about it. It took me a good solid year to get to a point where I was like, no, what do I really want in life? I just want to go be a great mom. And I will say that my whole life, I just wanted to work, right? And go as far as I could and do as many things as I could and have as many work experiences as I wanted and could possibly get. But then I couldn't stop thinking about, I just want to be a great mom. And that's my job. That's the most important job. And so I essentially took about
And
a
just
year
to
to look
pause
for.
and reflect here, to interrupt because this is it's really worth recognizing. So at this point, you had 19 years, close to 19 years tenure at Microsoft. You were in a general manager role. You had obviously built your career, built your network, had moved and successfully progressed your career there. And what were you thinking at that time when you were noticing this kind of internal questioning or internal conflict of like, wow, what if I designed things differently? What if I designed things differently so I could have more time with the kids?
Yeah, I did try all the steps that everyone encourages you on, right? Work-life balance is your own choice, right? Put the blocks on your calendar and make sure that you're really set great boundaries about your work-life balance. And I could do, and the people I worked with allowed me to do that. When you set a boundary, people tend to respect them. But I kept losing my boundary, and it was my own fault, and I kept getting lost in that. And I recognized, all of the things that were most important to me, and I just wrote them down. I wrote down, what are the most important things to me right now? What do I want right now? And it's different than I wanted a year ago, 10 years ago. And so I got really clear with myself on two topics. One, who was I if I didn't have a job? Because I'd always identified with myself as having a job. Who was I if I wasn't this title, this person who worked at this company, right? Who was I? And I thought, I don't know. That's who I am. And I was like, oh gosh, I'm a sister, I'm a mom, I'm all of these other things. But my identity was really wrapped up core in who I was as a working person. The second thing was financially. Okay, I want to take 2 years off. I don't want to retire. I was not ready to retire because I really loved working in many ways. But I wanted to know that I was financially sound. And getting through those two things, the financial one was it took me a while to get through it and just make sure I was ready economically to be able to take 2 years off. And that took me a couple months. And I worked it all out, and I felt I could comfortably be out for 2 years and then see if I could get back into the workforce, or maybe not. But the ego piece was really hard for me. I had to work through that a lot. Who was I if I wasn't in a job? And I had to work through this notion of I'm just me. I'm me, and I'm a lot of things. I don't have to be this one thing. I can be all of these different things at the same time. And what's most important to me right now is being a great mom. And I could be a working mom and be a great mom, but I wasn't the mom that I wanted to be at that moment, right? There are plenty of great parents who are working parents. I am, again, a working parent because I went back to work. And I still feel like I'm a great parent. But in that moment, all I cared about was, how do I get to be with my kids more and be present in their lives at a very critical and important age. And at that time they were, 9 and 10 years old. Right?
And I love how you centered this, Jeana, how you centered yourself in your story by saying, I want to be this. Of course, you wanted to do it for the triplets as well and to explore who that was, but you kept yourself at the center of that and then really connected your values in a way that made your intention really, really clear coming out of that. And I think that's such a great lesson for folks who are considering making any kind of change in career, is to keep yourself centered, keep your values present, and then really set a clear intention and follow through how you spent time planning also financially. Okay, let's get very serious. Let's take a close look at the numbers here. Let's inform and educate ourselves and be super clear about trade-offs, be super clear about what needs to happen in order to have that security and well-being. And I think that was a really savvy approach.
Well, and it also feels selfish, I will admit. It's selfish to sometimes feel like you're putting yourself at the center. But what was so important for me was to be clear on what I wanted so I could show up for other people in the way that I wanted to show up for them, right? And if I wasn't great for myself, then I wasn't going to be great for my kids, even staying at home. So I had to make sure I was shored up in a way that I felt ready, excited, and able to step into that super important position, right? I told myself, I gave myself a promotion by going and being a great mom. And, I got a promotion for myself at the time because that's what I wanted to be. And that's what I was aspiring to do in that moment. But it feels selfish. And I talked to a lot of people like, how did you just do it? And I was like, I just got really clear on what I wanted and what I needed and what my family needed.
And how did people respond when you started floating the idea in your circle or socializing this a bit of, hey, I'm thinking of making this move?
It was quite polarizing, quite interesting. Most people said things to me. And again, these are people who I know just wanted what was best for me. But people said, you'll never get a job in tech again. You'll never be able to, once you get out of work, it'll be so hard for you to get back, especially if you take 2 years off. You'll never get paid as much as you're getting paid right now. A lot of you'll nevers. right? And so I kept hearing it.
Wow.
And so my dad taught me a really important lesson when I was young, which was whenever ever anybody says you can't do something, that's a clear sign that that's your vision to go do it. Like, and so I was like, okay, got it, right? So I kept hearing this and I kept going, oh, it's just making it more and more clear for me that I'm supposed to go do this, because they were projecting their own fears. And I will be honest, a lot of those fears came from men. And my great male friends who I love and cherish, right? They're like, again, I know they were looking out for me, but it was fear of like, what would you be if you didn't have a job? It was all the stuff that was in my own head and my own ego that I had already worked through to get to the point to be able to tell people, I am going to go be a stay-at-home mom for 2 years. And then there's another piece of women, there's a set of people, a very small set of people that said, good for you. I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited for you. One was my financial advisor and good friend. And the other was my coach. And my coach was like, yes, you're very clear on what you need and why you need it. And do not listen to anybody else or anybody saying to you that this is going to be a bad thing for you. But I will say the thing that was so important for hearing all of that feedback on all the reasons why I shouldn't leave was really grounded in this weird feeling of not being wedded to my outcome. Like, okay, what if they're saying is true? What if all that they're saying to me is true? What if I can't get another job in tech again? What if I can't work again? What if I'm not going to get paid as much as I get paid now? And I had to get to a point where I was like, am I okay with that? Am I not okay with that? And I got really clear, like, I don't care. And then it was like, okay, when you don't care about what the outcome is and you're really clear on what it is you want to do, then it just makes it so easy. That leap for me was probably the easiest leap I've ever made.
We are so powerful when we are not attached to outcomes, right? Especially in high pressure, high stakes moments, because we've done the work, we've done the preparation, we've tuned in. So it, as you said, like it was the easiest leap that you made by the end. And I also wanted to honor the reframe that you made there, which is, hey, I'm promoting myself into a new role. I'm not stopping or hindering my career. I'm promoting myself. And that's such a powerful kind of beacon that you set out for yourself there. So then how did you build a bridge into this new setup where the calendar has, the work calendar has gone away or changed, and now it's the family calendar? How did you step into that?
Well, first I just knew I needed to get some sleep, to be honest. I was sleep deprived for so many years, and I was like, I'm just going to sleep. That was my number one goal. Actually, that was my number 3 goal. My number one goal was, and really why I wanted to write this time down, or take the time, was I wanted to write my boys' story down. My boys were adopted, and every adoptive adult I've ever spoken with says the best thing an adoptive parent can do for their child is to write their story down so they don't fill in any of the gaps about where they came from or who they are with stories in their head, right? They know from the beginning what their story was. And so I was like a private investigator. I was like, I'm writing down everything I know. I went through all the court records again and every scenario we had lived through over those first 6.5 years. And I wrote it all down for them. And it was very, to be honest, probably one of the most emotional and turbulent sort of moments in those first like 6-7 months for me, because I was reliving a really tumultuous time for us where I didn't know if the courts were going to reunify them with their biological father, right? I didn't know if that, and he had a history of very severe domestic abuse and lots of other things that are not helpful for children, and I just worried about that. But every day I worried that somebody was going to reunify those kids with somebody who I felt was unsafe, and I had no control over that. And so I relived this feeling again of learning how I really have no control over anything, and I relived it again writing their story down. And so I wrote their story down, and then I really just got to be present and be a mom. That was my other big thing. I just wanted to be there and be present, and then I wanted to sleep. And so I did those 3 things. And ironically, I was busier than I've ever been during that time off. I was like, how did I ever do life before? And I realized I did life between like midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, which, led to the sleep deprivation. And it was just trying to do everything all the time and be good at all the things that I did to not let myself or anybody else down. So, but yeah, I loved the time. It was the best decision I ever made, was to take that time off and to take a minute to breathe and get off the hamster wheel and be really clear on what I wanted. And that can change at any moment. It can change what I want, and it's okay if it changes. But I just need to be asking myself that question. What do you need? What do you want?
Was there one moment, Jeana, during that time that reinforced for you that you'd made the right decision, or that you just keep in your heart with you today?
Oh, every day that I look at my kids, every day that I see their little faces, like I knew it was the right decision. They needed it at that right time. I needed it at that time. I got to pick them up from school every day, and I already took them to school in the mornings, but I got to pick them up from school. I got to go volunteer in their classrooms. There was never a moment where I missed writing another doc or being in another meeting, making a decision about something, or, doing another whatever, right? I missed the people that I worked with a lot, because I really enjoyed the people that I worked with a lot, but I didn't miss the work itself at that moment. I just was like, my work right now is these 3 little faces and making sure like they have what they need. And it really was great for it. It was so great for us, right? All of us.
Yeah. So I'm curious how you found your way back then to a full-time role, like a full-time company role, and take us through the build up to that, how it got sparked, because just being open with you, it's something that I've also done, where I stepped out for 2 years and then stepped back into full-time, and I of course had some doubts or insecurities about myself at that time. I don't know if you did too, but sure. Take us through how that started and what happened.
Yeah, I mean, everyone, everywhere, at every level has doubts, right? To say that they don't, is just a fallacy. So everyone has doubts about things or questions things, right? And that's why I think it's really important to have the conversation with yourself around what it is that asking yourself not just what you want, but what do you need, right, is so important. So I was really clear, like I wanted this time off. And my first month in, a woman who I've worked with on and off over the years at Microsoft, and I'll always pick up the phone for her, called me. And she was like, hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, I am on my first month of 2 years off. And she already knew I was doing that because we had been in touch. Great. And she's like, well, I have this job. And I said, I just need to be on my own. And it was interesting because in that first month, it was like, is the universe testing me? Because I had 3 similar phone calls like that, where people were like, what are you doing? Do you want to come do something new? And I was like, no. And I was like, hey, maybe next year call me. So January comes around, she calls me again and says, hey, what are you doing? And so there was this series of, hey, what are you doing over the course of my sort of first year off. And then she came to me with a job that, like, I was really clear on, if I were to go back to work, what would excite me? Because I knew the universe, to be honest, was going to test me about work. And there are lots of cool jobs and cool titles and great money and things that were like tempting me to leave what I said I wanted. And I was like, hey, that's super interesting. Do I? No, yes, maybe, no. And so I found myself kind of going like, yes, I want to, no, I don't want to. And then when it came down to, I was like, do I want these jobs? And is this the next thing? I would give up this wonderful situation I'm in. Like, this is a unique time to be able to have this time off. And then the job was so compelling, and I couldn't stop thinking about the job and the impact of the job. And it was leading worldwide learning at Microsoft, and in the age of AI, I was like, oh my goodness, it's all about skilling. It's all about how do we help build people's confidence and create their AI fluency so they can be the best workers they can be in current and future workforce, right? And I was like, there is no cooler job ever in that. And I had actually told her about that same job, that is the coolest job in the world, 5 years ago. And I was like, if that job were ever to be, that's the job I want.
Okay.
So fast forward 5 years, and I then had left Microsoft, went to Google, taken this time off, and then that job surfaced. And I do think there's something to be said for that clarity of what's the kind of job that you really want? What's the thing that excites you? And I'll be honest, I was like, I had to take a moment and go, am I doing this because I respect and adore this person so much who's calling me and I want to make them happy? Right. Am I doing this because this is the coolest job in the world and I really want this job? Am I doing this because I'm fearful of, like, I'm going to run out of money? And I really sat with myself for a while, and I was like, is this what I would want to do? And I couldn't stop thinking about how much the job itself inspired me. And so I was like, oh, I haven't felt that way in a while, and I really want to be that inspired again. And so I had a really heart-to-heart conversation with my boys, and my at that point I had gotten married, and so with my husband, I said, hey, what do you guys think about this? And my boys were not happy with that idea. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm just not going to do that. And then we talked more about it, and their one requirement, if I was going to go back to work, is that I could still pick them up from school on Fridays for some reason. And I said, okay, you'll still take me to school? Yes. Will you still pick me up from school on Fridays? And I said, yes. And they said, okay, then we're okay. We're okay. And my husband was like, you just do you do what's right for you. I support you. If you want to go back, great. If you don't, great. He was very much just like, do what you feel is right. And the boys got there on their own. Each of them although they're identical, they each got there on their own time frame with their own sort of requirements about what they needed from me in order to do that. But then I had to go back to work, but when I went back, I had to set a set of boundaries for myself, because I know that I'm not good at setting certain boundaries. I'm not good at my work-life balance, and I believe in my whole heart that work-life balance is personally driven, right? If you don't set a boundary, you are the one who is forcing, an imbalanced work-life balance on yourself, right? And so I said, I went over with the woman I'm working for now, and I said, here are my conditions of happiness that I need to talk to you about before I say yes to coming back to this job.
Love that. Yeah.
And I walked her through what those were, and she was like, I am right there with you. I am trying to do the same thing for myself. We will keep each other in check. And for me, it was really, really just about like being able to be supported in that situation of what I needed and what I needed to hold myself accountable for. So I needed her to like hold me accountable too, to my conditions of happiness. So she was on board trying to do it. And so we were both holding each other mutually accountable for setting a better example for ourselves and our teams, knowing that she and I have the same tendencies to get into work like head first. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, nice. So was it weird when you started again? Like, what were the first couple weeks like? Because for me, I felt like I had stepped back onto a different planet, and I knew the planet. It wasn't like unfamiliar, but I was just like, oh wow, like is this work? Is this like, what is work? What is life? I don't know. I was just generally confused, but it sounds like you did much better.
No, I didn't. I love the question because I think it's really funny. There's a couple of things. I'll tell you the things that were weird and the things that were so similar they were weird. So going back to Microsoft was a place I knew, and I'd been there 19 years, and I went back and haven't been gone for 4.5 years or almost 5 years. And when I went back, people were like, welcome home. It was such an interesting thing to say to somebody in email, like, welcome home. And so to me, that was just said to me like, oh, Microsoft has a very wonderfully unique culture about it being very family oriented. Like, everybody tries to help each other out. Like, it's just a very communal in so many ways. And so when I came back, I was like, oh, look at that. That's my family welcoming me home. And it was just such a difference than welcome to Microsoft or welcome back. It was welcome. So that was so lovely. What was really hard for me was I had to build my workplace stamina. I wasn't working at a desk and in meetings for 8-10 hours a day all day, and I was like, what? Like I was like, you guys are gonna have to be patient with me because I'm good for a good 2 hours right now, and then I need a break, and then I need so I had to really build that, my ability to be focused and concentrate for long periods of time and create the breaks I needed to just like whoa. So mentally it was a little bit exhausting for me. The second thing is my first week was an offsite with the team on campus. And so I was not home when my boys got home from school that first week. And I came upstairs and I was like, where's Gabe? And he was in the shower crying. And I found him in a little ball in the shower crying. And, this is an 11-year-old boy, right? And I said, what's going on? And he's like, you were not here when I got home. And I had a really hard day. And I mean, talk about question your whole foundation. I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I shouldn't have gone back to work. I betrayed him at his, I said I would be here. And I didn't signpost for him that I wasn't going to be here. Anyway, we worked through it and he was okay. But it was like to walk home and come in the door to that, I was devastated. and I let him down, and I was so disappointed. And so we worked through it, and he was like, "It's okay. I just, I thought you'd be here, and I had a rough day, and I wanted to talk to you." And so that was
Oh,
really hard for
yeah.
me. And then the other thing that was a little bit of an adjustment, to be honest, that was sort of weird going back was I think being very clear on my conditions of happiness, and then yet knowing in the back of my mind, when is that going to stop? When am I going to let myself down and get back into old habits that aren't good for me? And I was like, why am I framing it like this? And I could hear the talk track in my head around, set your boundaries, be clear, but you're gonna break these boundaries down pretty soon. And I was like, knock it off. Like, and so there was
Yeah.
this weird sense of like almost making excuses for bad behavior that I had had in the past around my patterns in life and how I worked, and I was like, no, I'm not going to go back to those bad habits. I'm not going to do that. And so far, I've been pretty good. I'll be honest. I'm pretty proud of myself. I give myself like a B minus in terms of that. I need to do better, but I didn't go straight to like an F, right? I make sure I'm present in every moment with whoever I'm with. I'm present when I'm at work. And then I'm present when I'm home with my kids, and I'm not on my devices. I'm not on my phone. My team knows, like, I take the kids to school in the morning. I am not in meetings in the morning, right? You cannot find me until 8:30, right? And so we're really clear on sort of those boundaries that I'm working feverishly to maintain them.
And Jeana, you told me that one of the things that you reminded yourself or maybe worked on with your coach is the idea that, hey, the way we talk to ourselves, that self-talk, that inner voice, is that how we would talk to someone we care about, like a best friend? Because if we're not using our best friend voice with ourselves, come on, like, are we really beating ourselves up? Are we being negative in a way that's not constructive with ourselves? So it sounds like you've been working on that a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everybody has that. Like, if you're an engineer, you're trained to test a hypothesis always. So you're looking for the thing that's going to go wrong, right? Or if you're raised by parents who are like always have a plan B, plan C, you're looking for things to go wrong, right? And that's just sort of the way people who are taught to be productive are raised, right? You be productive or else, right? Or you do this or else. And what was really important for me was that I started having like, oh, well, you're not a great mom, or you're not being as great at your job as you could be, or whatever. I'm like, would I ever say that to my best friend? Would I ever say that to anybody? First of all,
No.
well, especially anybody I cared about. So why am I doing that to myself? It's such a physical and emotional drain on yourself to do that to yourself. And when I started being my best cheerleader and getting really clear on what I want and needed, I felt honestly invincible. I was invincible because I felt like I didn't care what was going to happen at the end. I didn't care what the outcome was. I mean, I always care about good things happening, but what I try to do is figure out, how do I maintain the longest period of happiness in my life? And so that I just do, like, I want to be happy. I want to be in a great place. And so that self-talk is not helpful. And I've learned, like, oh, that is just not somebody or something I need in my life. So like I cut out the little voice in my head, right? And that was so helpful. And then I started to learn it. I started to teach it to be my biggest fan and my biggest cheerleader.
Ooh,
and not
nice.
in an arrogant way, but in a way that was like, I'm here with you. You got this. It's like a whole, all the time, you got this. So now I walk into a room, and I assume when I walk into a room, people are there to help me figure out a problem. People are there to support me. People are there and are happy I'm there in the room. I don't walk in saying, this person's going to tear my idea apart. This person's going to do this. And assume things that aren't even true before they've happened. And so what I just walk in is an assumption of like, hey, this is how I want it to go. And I envision how it's going to go before it's even happened. And if for some reason something has gone sideways, I know how to ground myself. I know how to put both feet on the ground and take a deep breath and not act out of my instinct, which is, go fight with somebody, and act out of my intuition, which tends to be a little more empathetic, and saying, this person could be having a bad day. This person could be, worried about a sick relative. You know what? I am not going to take this personally. I'm going to address them in a respectful way. And if they continue to be disrespectful, I end the conversation and I walk out. It's very, very simple for me now. But I didn't have those tools earlier because I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't have that grounding. I had my own little voice in there going like, ooh, this person's going to come in and hate your idea, or this person's going to come in and beat your plan up. And once I got rid of that, I was like, oh, none of that's true.
You said to me, Jeana, that resilience is a muscle. Tell me what you meant by that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something you practice, right? Like, I remember I have had moments where I'm like, oh, that situation did not feel great. That hurt, and I'm gonna stay in a little fetal position for a little while longer right now, right? And then I've had moments where I'm like, oh, that hurt, but it doesn't. I know it's not about me, right? Realizing that
Yeah.
99.9% of things aren't actually about you is another ego thing that you learn where you just practice this. Like, this isn't about me. This is about the idea, or this is about the plan. And you take your own emotion out of it, and you're able to handle things with such greater diplomacy and, greater empathy for another individual. And the only thing you can be responsible for is how you respond to things. I could never be responsible, Neil, for the way you respond to anything I say. Not everything goes your way all the time. And you got to practice the positive wins. You got to practice this good self talk about, people are in this room and they want to support me. You have to practice envisioning the outcome of whatever this event is and say, it's going to go really great today. I'm feeling really good about this. And acknowledge to yourself when you're not feeling great about something. Why are you not feeling great about it? And just being honest, right? Why do I not feel good about this? Oh, because, there's, barking dogs all around the room and I'm scared of dogs, right? You just have to acknowledge those things and talk through each and every one when you're uncomfortable. And know that whether it's really an external factor making you uncomfortable or whether it's just your own head making you uncomfortable with stories.
And Jeana, I'll just quickly pause and encourage listeners to also get in touch if they're liking what they're hearing from you. Look for your next speaking opportunities. I had the chance to see you at a Women in Cloud events gala in Bellevue, Washington, and that was such a pleasure. So there, I remember you shared some particular stories about challenging rooms, really important executive conversations, and difficult meetings that you've navigated through and how you navigated through them. So I think there's a lot that you have to offer when it comes to this topic of resilience, intention, and also, as you mentioned, like control, like controlling what we can control and tapping in also to the emotional signals that we're getting, realizing that emotions are a signal for something. So pausing and sitting with that. Why is that making me feel this way? Let's talk more about your charity, about the Pepper Foundation. So you're the founder and executive director of the Pepper Foundation. So tell us more, just give a quick plug. What is the work they do? Who do they serve? And why did you get inspired about that topic?
Yeah, so my aunt and my family has always been involved in social work, and so we have been around foster kids for a very long time. And when my father passed away, he was always so great about seeing the potential of others. Like, that was his thing. Like, how do you see the potential in others and then really go help them, meet that potential? And so it's just something that was ingrained in us as a kid. I always, learn to walk in others' shoes and learn to be empathetic. And then when he passed away, I was like, someday I want to do something that honors that for him, right? And then I started becoming a foster parent myself, and then seeing the needs of these foster kids that came into emergent care during the holidays often. Usually it's the winter holidays. And they miss all the deadlines for the more professional services you get to get gifts or to find families that care for them. And so we started this thing where we're like, hey, we're going to make sure every kid who comes into care, even if it's on Christmas Day, has gifts, or whatever holiday it is. They have things for them. They have the things that are uniquely their own. Because when you go into foster care, oftentimes, especially emergent foster care, everything that you have loved and care about is gone, right? And so that for me was really important to make sure they had something, a blanket, a toy, a backpack, and a set of things that they could carry with them. And then now we then spun out into doing that for prom and for homecoming, making sure kids had nice clothes to wear, and we do it for back to school, and we're doing, we've had some people do college grants and help kids go to college. And so we've just done a lot of different things for kids who need it, right? Even just, somebody needed a pair of, I'm sorry, that's my dog barking in the background if you can hear him.
Yeah.
Just making sure a kid had a new pair of shoes for school because their shoes had holes in it, and he really wanted this really cool pair of Nike Jordans, and we got him a nice pair of his own Nike Jordans. And, it's fun to be able to give a kid something that they want and that they ask for. And so we really focus on what is it that they want.
Well, that's amazing. Jeana, I'd like to include in the show notes some links to the Pepper Foundation. So if listeners are interested, they can learn a bit more about that. And as you mentioned, it's really important to give. It's a really important time of year here too. We're recording this here in November. So I hope everyone will take a look. And Jeana, with that, thank you for the wisdom and experience you've shared with us here today on the show.
Thanks for having me, Neil. It was so great to talk to you, and I loved your questions. They're very thoughtful. Thank you.